guys, it's Dr. Drake 63 here today, and I want to talk a little bit about concealability versus shootability. What got me thinking about this is today did a couple things. I took these 4 pistols to the range. A couple 357s, a 9mm, and another 357. So what got me thinking about this is earlier today I wanted to replace the grips on the Smith & Wesson Model 60 because even though I like the extra support that I get from having this little extension down here where you can grab the pinky, it makes it really hard for me to pocket conceal, which is what I like to do. I'll show you that in a minute. So I was able to get a set of these grips, and these are the same grips that I have on my 637. And they're pretty brief in terms of, am I going to shoot this gun a lot? Is it a target model, whatever? Is it the most comfortable scenario? No, these are more comfortable, but this is more concealable. I'm just going to briefly talk about that, my favorite in the waistband carry gun, this Glock 19, and how I shoot these guys, and compare that to these two big boys. This is an Uberti Cattleman 2. This is in 357. I typically shoot this in 38. In fact, I only shoot it in 38. I shoot it with some pretty dumbed down 38 loads, which are made for cowboy shooting competition, and I like this stuff. And then this guy right here, which is a newly acquired, for me, 28-2 Smith & Wesson. And this is a very comfortable shooting gun, but it's heavy and it's big, and you're certainly not going to conceal that. I'm going to talk about this Uberti a little bit. I have the Taylor Smoke Wagon, which is a more refined version of this. It's got a little bit thinner grips on it and a little bit smoother trigger. But it's the same basic gun, and I took this today, hadn't shot it in a while. This has a 5.5-inch barrel. It is a gate loading, single action only affair. And what made me take it out today is I saw somebody on a thread today on Facebook talking about, well, you don't want to shoot these, they're just pretty to look at, you need to get the Ruger Vaquero. And to that I call bullshit. These guns are very well made. I'm sure everybody's got a story about they know a guy who whatever. But in terms of just a really nice 6-shooter that handles your standard 357 loads, no problem, shoots them comfortably, it's a real accurate gun for me. However, would this be a good concealed carry gun? No, it wouldn't. This has one place for you basically to carry it, and that's in a holster. And the same thing goes with this 28-2. You put this inside your waistband, there's a good chance that your pants are going to be falling down around your ankles. This is definitely an outside the waistband holster type of gun as well. I really like it. It's kind of new to me, and but I shoot it very well. It's a very accurate gun, and I'm pretty sure there's not a 357 load on the planet that this thing wouldn't handle. Those end frames are pretty stout. But getting into the realm of things that I can conceal carry, this conceals in the waistband very easily for me. I'm going to show you that for a minute. This can conceal in the waistband or conceal in the pocket, no problem. And before we do that, we will be sure to unload it. I took this out of my pocket just now. I mentioned for pocket carry and concealability why I want to have something such as you see here. This is the 637, where you don't have anything that's protruding in terms of taking this out of the pocket, and that's what we have for this Model 60. Okay, so I mentioned same Same grips, and that's what you see here. These are identical for a J frame. This is what's called a round butt. For those of you that hear that term that don't know what it means, basically it means that as the back of this frame comes down on the grip, it curves like this as opposed to coming down straight and making a square. Round butt. So anything that'll fit on this 637 is going to work on this Model 60 as well. But I really like the way that this conceals in the pocket. Wanted to do something similar with this. Again, you put this on here. May not look like a bunch more, but that's almost an inch. And that's going to show. And I take this a lot of places I don't want it to show. And that I mentioned in the pocket. Simple little sleeve, no big deal here. But what it does, you want to make sure that it's going to cover up your hammer so that that's not going to get caught in anything. And I always pull it out like that. Finger off the trigger, cover the hammer, so I'm not worrying about it getting snagged on anything. I also mentioned this Glock, and I like to carry this in the waistband at about 4 o'clock. So this shirt's a little bit on the tight side down here. Typically, I'm going to have something a little bit longer so that you're not noticing that, but this is so easy for me to access. And for that reason, this is such a nice size. Now, imagine, if you will, trying to do that with something like this, especially with the width of that wheel. It'd drive you crazy. But the Glock 19, at least for me, is a perfect carry size for in the waistband. Too big for the pocket. Not so much with the 637 and say, for example, the Model 36, which I also own. And now, thanks to changing out the grips, not so much with that on the Model 60. Also mentioned that I do have an in the waistband option as well that works for the 637 or the Model 60. You can see that this is a J frame Blackhawk, size 5, made in Italy. Needs a little bit more breaking in. I tend to carry pocket with these guys, but it's nice to have this option if you want it. So lots of different options. Now, we talked about sacrificing shootability for concealability. This Model 60 right here is pretty close now because I don't have the longer grip, but can I shoot this as accurately? Well, first of all, this isn't an accuracy gun. Look at the sights. It doesn't have adjustable sights. Your sight picture's pretty limited. Okay, so this is what I call point and click. This is it, you know, obviously has a capability of being more than a belly gun, so to speak. But this isn't something you're going to go shooting in target matches with, whereas you might with something like that. So I've decided a little bit less stability, but I can squeeze the heck out of this, and I can be accurate at distances out to 20, 30 feet, no problem with this minute of man. And so I've decided I'd much rather be able to take this more places in a concealed manner than not. And I probably would continue to shoot it a little bit better if I could have just a little bit more stability right here. But truth of the matter is, I've got strong enough hands. You can see these bear claws right here, that what I'm able to do with those 2 fingers in terms of holding on to this firearm is plenty, and I support it with a second hand, and really it's not a problem. Really, the bigger issue on this Model 60 is the trigger pull, something we continue to work with, but it's a self-defense gun. It's not a range toy, that's for sure. Now, getting over to this Glock 19, I'm able to engage this with all 3 of my fingers. And I'm able, especially with the 19, guys, if you haven't checked it out, if you've tried prior Glocks and don't like the sponginess of the trigger, you need to check this out, because it's just got such a better trigger, this Generation 5, in my opinion. But I'm able to shoot this accurately at pretty much any distance. Doesn't matter if I'm using plus P or range ammo or whatever. One reason is, look at these sights. And a lot of people complain about the Glock sights, but if you ask me, just for my eyes, there's just not a better sight picture. I mean, against a black background, yes. Against a white background, no problem. Against any background, no problem. And I've got the X version of this, which has a little bit more capacity. It has night sights on it, and it has the longer grip, just a little bit for the extra capacity. Enough so that while it might be a little bit better on the shootability scale, it's less on the concealability scale. And the main thing is, guys, is I don't want to print. Not interested in that. Well, some guys don't care. You boys down in Texas, you strap a howitzer to the side of your hip, and you don't care where you go or what you do. But I like to be discreet, and for that reason, I like these firearms that I can carry in the waistband or in my pocket and not make a show of myself, but I'm prepared. But size-wise, like I said, you're not talking about that much bigger of a firearm with this Glock, but enough so that in the waistband is definitely necessary. It's not a pocket gun for me. Now, I'm going to shoot a firearm like this more accurately any day, even though this has sights that are much more like that Model 60 I showed you earlier that aren't pronounced. It's got a nice sight radius, 5.5 inches, and I shoot this surprisingly accurately. Then this guy here we talked about in a prior video, black on black, that's a tough day at the office. So we're going to have to do something about those sights in terms of getting some red on there or something like that. But or shoot against backgrounds where it's more visible, obviously here. And I'll shoot the same hole all day when I can see the sights on this, but obviously when I can't, different story. But again, not concealable. Not concealable. 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 So you guys kind of see where I'm coming from here. Shootability versus concealability, and in terms of what's the best overall combination for me, without a doubt, you're looking at it right here. You're looking at it right here. This thing that says Austria 9x19 Generation 5. I shoot this thing extremely accurately, and I can shoot it extremely accurately very quickly. No problem putting all 16 rounds on target, 9mm plus P, man-sized target, 10 yards, not a problem. I can just do a mag dump, and I'm going to hit that target every time. Try that with a 357 Magnum. It's a little bit tougher day at the office, and either way, you're limited to 6 shots. In the case of these guys, you're limited to 5 shots, and you're getting into muzzle rise and everything else. So it all comes down to what your particular preferences are and what you want to be prepared for. So like I said, it all comes down to what your preference is. There's a lot of guys that don't like these Glocks. A lot of guys that don't. I used to didn't like them so much, but I realized it was more as I didn't like the people that were always talking about them as if they're the only firearm that ever existed. It's not the case. You guys that watch Hickok 45, you guys that watch the Larry Vickers channel, you'll know these guys have respect for these firearms as a tool, not as something that's pretty and shiny like a new penny, but something as a tool. For my money, you're not going to beat that Glock 19 for a concealed carry firearm. However, my favorite round is not 9mm. My favorite round is 357 Magnum, and for a nightstand gun, for a target gun, for a carry in my car gun, ready to take on pretty much anything that's going to come at me. That 357 Magnum, this guy right here, or something like it, is going to be my preferred type of firearm. But I did just want to talk about where I view my trade-off between concealability and carryability and shootability. So the guns that you shoot the most accurately at the greatest range typically aren't the guns that are the most concealable. You need to find that trade-off. But one thing's for sure, if it's a gun that you can't carry, it's not going to do you any good. And so the best advice that I've seen anyone give when it comes to what firearm should I conceal carry, it's always the one that you are going to carry, and it's always the one that you can shoot proficiently. So whatever you get, my recommendation is understand how that firearm works, know its limitations, know your limitations, and whatever you do, practice with it. And don't just practice shooting at that target, you know, bang, wait 5 seconds, bang, and talk about your groups. You need to practice getting your rounds off quick. Because if you ever, and let's hope that you never do, but if you ever need to produce a firearm to save your life and potentially take somebody else's life, you got to be good at it. This is something that you're not going to get a do-over with. So make sure you practice real-life situations. Make sure you practice drawing that holster, or drawing out of your holster, out of your pocket. Make sure you dry fire, use snap caps if you're worried about messing up your firearm. Most of them you won't. But make sure you practice, and more important than anything, the most important practice you can do, and yes, I have my finger on the trigger and no, it's not loaded, guys, and you're not really standing there anyway, but the most important thing you can do in terms of dry fire, you practice keeping the muzzle still while you pull the trigger. You can sit there and watch TV and do this. In double action, if you want to practice in single action, you don't want this to move. You want to practice whatever you can do to not be all over the place with this, because God help you if you have to pull this thing. You want to hit what you're aiming at, and you're not gonna if you don't have trigger control. So just a few things of advice to throw out today. There's people that are experts at this. I am not an expert, but I am a guy that spends a lot of time doing this, and I spend a lot of time learning, researching, training, and I suggest if you're serious about carrying, you do the same thing. This is Dr. Drake 63 saying thanks for watching, and have a great day.